in which our lovers begin to learn the consequences of their actions. Chapter 9. Surrounded by all her bathed, wet-headed children, Darya Alexandrovna, a kerchief on her head, was driving up to her house when the coachman said, "Some gentleman's coming. Looks like the one from Pokrovska." Darya Alexandrovna peered ahead and rejoiced, seeing the familiar figure of Levin in a grey hat and grey coat coming to meet them. She was always glad to see him, but she was especially glad now that he would see her in all her glory. No one could understand her grandeur better than Levin. Seeing her, he found himself before one of the pictures of his imaginary future family life. "You're just like a mother hen, Darya Alexandrovna." "Oh, I'm so glad," she said, giving him her hand. "Glad, but you didn't even let me know. My brother's staying with me. I got a note from Stiva saying that you were here." "From Stiva?" Darya Alexandrovna asked in surprise. "Yes, he wrote that you'd moved, and he thought you might allow me to help you in some way," Levin said, and having said it suddenly became embarrassed, fell silent and went on walking beside the brake, plucking linden shoots and biting them in two. He was embarrassed by the realization that it might be unpleasant for Darya Alexandrovna to be helped by an outsider in something that should have been done by her husband. Darya Alexandrovna indeed disliked this way Stepan Arkadyevitch of foisting his family affairs on others, and she knew at once that Levin understood it. It was for this subtle understanding, for this delicacy, that Darya Alexandrovna loved him. "I understand, of course," said Levin, "that it only meant you wanted to see me, and I'm very glad of it. Of course, I can imagine that you, the mistress of a townhouse, may find it wild here, and if there's any need, I'm entirely at your service." "Oh, no," said Dolly. "At the first it was uncomfortable, but now everything's settled beautifully, thanks to my old nanny," she said, pointing to Matryona Filimonovna, who, realizing that they were talking about her, smiled gaily and amiably to Levin. She knew him, knew that he was a good match for the young lady, and wished things would work out. "Get in, please. We'll squeeze over," she said to him. "No, I'll walk. Children, who wants to race the horses with me?" The children scarcely knew Levin, did not remember when they had last seen him, but did not show that strange feeling of shyness and aversion towards him that children so often feel for shamming adults, for which they are so often painfully punished. Shamming in anything at all can deceive the most intelligent, perceptive person, but the most limited child will recognize it and feel aversion, no matter how artfully it is concealed. Whatever Levin's shortcomings were, there was no hint of sham in him, and therefore the children showed him the same friendliness they found in their mother's face. At his invitation, the two older ones at once jumped down and ran with him as simply as they would have run with a nanny, with Miss Hull, or with their mother. Lily also started asking to go with him, and her mother handed her down to him. He put her on his shoulders and ran with her. "Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, Darya Alexandrovna," he said, smiling gaily to the mother. "There's no chance he'll hurt her or drop her." and seeing his deft, strong, cautiously mindful, and all too tense movements, the mother calmed down and smiled gaily and approvingly as she watched him. Here in the country, with the children and Darya Alexandrovna, who was so sympathetic to him, Levin got into that childishly merry state of mind that often came over him, and which Darya Alexandrovna especially loved in him. He ran with the children, taught them gymnastics, made Miss Hull laugh with his bad English, and told Darya Alexandrovna about his occupations in the country. After dinner, sitting alone with him on the balcony, Darya Alexandrovna began talking about Kitty. "Do you know, Kitty's coming here and will spend the summer with me?" "Really?" he said, flushing, and to change the subject said at once, "Shall I send you 2 cows, then? If you want to keep accounts, then you can pay me 5 rubles a month, if you're not ashamed." "No, thank you. We're all settled." "Well, then, I'll have a look at your cows, and, with your permission, give orders on how to feed them. The whole thing is in the feeding." And Levin, only to divert the conversation, explained to Darya Alexandrovna the theory of dairy farming, the essence of which was that a cow is merely a machine for processing feed into milk, and so on. He was saying that while passionately wishing to hear the details about Kitty, and at the same time fearing it. He was afraid that the peace he had attained with such difficulty might be disturbed. "Yes, but anyhow all that has to be looked after, and who will do it?" Darya Alexandrovna replied reluctantly. She had now set up her housekeeping so well, though, through Matryona Milimonovna's, that she did not want to change anything in it, nor did she trust Levin's knowledge of agriculture. The argument that a cow is a machine for producing milk was suspect to her. It seemed to her that such arguments could only hinder things. To her it all seemed much simpler. As Matryona Filimonovna explained, they had only to give Spotty and White Rump more to eat and drink, and keep the cook from taking the kitchen scraps to the washerwoman's cow. That was clear, and all this talk about starchy and grassy feeds was dubious and vague. Above all, she wanted to talk about Kitty. If you enjoy this format, please leave a like and subscribe and return tomorrow for the next chapter.